what is ALL'S FAIRE? ALL'S FAIRE is a web series that I made with some friends and partners all the way back in 2008 and 2009. And we are releasing it as a feature cut. What is that? 15, 16 years later? 17 years later? Oh my God. But I wanted to introduce this project a little bit because it's interesting. If you have seen this Ren Fair Netflix documentary, maybe there are some similarities in terms of topics, but remember, this came out all the way back in 2008. One of my best friends from college is a guy, Bob McClure, who is also the McClure of McClure's Pickles, as it turns out. That's his company now, and he's become, wildly successful shilling pickles. But I knew him first as an actor, and he was a brilliant actor, actually, in college and thereafter. And Bob was also a writer and really interested in writing comedy and things like this. And so we teamed up. And at one point, I remember we had gone to visit another friend in Pennsylvania who was living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This was in a year or two after college. And because Lancaster is right next to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair, we got high and we went to the Renaissance Fair, and it was just an amazing time. I remember people were taking it very seriously. There's arguments about how to properly peace tie your weapons and so on and so forth. We thought it was really funny that people were taking this stuff so seriously. At the same time, though, there were people in costume, on smoke breaks, which we thought was funny, or on their phones. We saw a guy dressed up with as a wizard arguing with someone else about historical verisimilitude, which is there wouldn't have been wizards or dragons or things like that either in the Renaissance. So all of this was just very funny. I think in many ways good comedy comes from the dichotomy between how seriously someone takes themselves and how seriously we, the audience, take them, right? So it's always much more funny if someone takes themselves very, very seriously, but they're doing something that is, relatively low stakes. And for me, that kind of summed up the Renaissance Fair. So Bob and I started talking, and we kind of put together an idea for a Renaissance Fair feature. This was I guess the early days of The Office, the US version. Maybe hadn't even fully come out yet when we started to write this, and but the British version we loved, and certainly there was the Christopher Guest Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show movies. We wrote a feature in that format, and actually we took it to some producers, started developing it. We're thinking about figuring out a way to launch it as a feature. We also at the same time were making my show, or our show, The Burg, and a couple of other shows at the same time. And Bob was involved in that, and we were seeing some success in that. I think it's important to say, Bob and I are not Renaissance Fair people, but we also don't want to make fun of the Renaissance Fair. We never did. There was something, when we sat and actually met people from it and started to go more and talk to people, it was much more okay, I have respect for what these people are doing, I knew a girl in college who dropped out of theater school to become the mud wench in the Renaissance Fair, and I thought that was just amazing and perfect and all of this stuff. And the passion with which they do it, I should say, and the care that they're putting in, and just the level of commitment to that particular form of entertainment and escapism was even though it's not my thing. But anyway, so we wrote this as a feature, and we're trying to get it sold. And we're working with Kelly Giddish in the Burg and other stuff, and we hear that she's been given a script to a Renaissance Fair movie. And she's is this yours? And no, it wasn't. Well, this movie, I forget what the original title was, but we heard that there was going to be a Renaissance Fair movie starring Christina Ricci. And we were oh crap, because, there's really only going to be one successful Renaissance Fair comedy. There could only be one. And so we said, well, let it be ours. So instead of waiting to make this as a feature to raise funds and try to make it for real, we decided to just use whatever resources we had, which was nothing, a couple dollars and some Renaissance Fair connections and connections to decent New York City area actors, and do it as a web series. So that's what we did. So in 2008, we got our gang together and filmed, maybe around 10 shorts just casting some of our friends. Bob played the wizard. I played a minstrel, a very small part, along with some of our friends from the Burg, Matt Yeager, who's also my writing partner, playing Smokey, the blacksmith, and Jeff Scouron from the Burg playing the other minstrel. Mike Still, who went on to be the guy who ran Upright Citizens in LA, had also done Renaissance Fair work before and was instrumental into like putting this together, and he plays Magnus. And we just got this group together and had a lot of fun. We shot over the course of, I think, 1 or maybe 2 days at the New Jersey Renaissance Fair. And we put it up, and, it immediately kind of planted the flag. All's Fair, the web series, came out. 2 things happened. One, which was great, is we got nominated for the first ever Writers Guild Awards. We won some small awards in some various festivals here and there. And then the movie, which had, previously been called something else, after All's Fair, the web series came out, changed its name to All's Fair in Love. And we were like, come on, are you kidding me? Yeah, they liked our name. They liked what we did so much, they had to borrow it. Anyway, that movie came out, and it sucked. I mean, I never saw it. I didn't bother, but from what I heard, it sucked. It just didn't make a splash whatsoever. And so we kept going. And the very next year, in 2009, we decided, you know what? We are going to pool the rest of our resources. Again, nothing but friendly relationships and stuff, and we decided we were going to make the whole roughly feature length, not the feature script, but a web series version. I think when you watch this, you will realize that it is not. It's not a feature. It is very much shot like a web series. It is a web series, but a lot of this was meant to sort of be like, some of these scenes could happen sort of in any order at any time. Other scenes are much more linear. There is a story, and it's a story about the Renaissance Fair being taken over by their land being sold by like a Walmart type place called Mallmart, the store that sells stores. And so to film this, we hooked up with some people from Pennsylvania Renaissance Fairs, not the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fairs, but another much smaller one, kind of in the hometown where I grew up, Midsummer Renaissance Festival. We actually couldn't shoot at the time when they were actually doing the festival. What we had to do is rely on them to help set up a micro festival on the grounds where they normally do it. And those grounds are like the Ukrainian Village Hall and Trailer Park in Pennsylvania, in Carbon County, Pennsylvania. Brought along our New York crew and our New York cast of actors and shot for 3 excruciatingly long days. But even on the day before, I was having a panic attack because we were here, but there was no festival set up. I was like, guys, where's the festival? And I was told by Brian, one of the guys running this, he's like, well, we call it the Gypsies. His words, not mine. The Gypsies are going to come. They're going to set up the tents. Don't worry. You can trust the Gypsies. And I'm like, you can trust the Gypsies is not like one of those maxims that I was taught to live by in film school. Lo and behold, it's the night before shooting. There's like barely any fair set up. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Dawn, I get out. We're all staying at the location overnight. Dawn, I get up from the little dorms there, and I go, and lo and behold, the Gypsies have come in. The Gypsies were a crew of traveling Ren Fair folk that came with tents and everything, and they just set everything up, and it was crazy. And they were just doing this for the love of doing this and for gas money. It was great. So our final cast ended up being, kind of one half New York City actors and friends of mine. And then, a lot of them were just random people that I met that day, who turned out to be instrumental to this show, especially all the little, various small characters like the mime and the cat face girl and Angry Bob and all of these people. And it was just a labor of love for all involved. We also brought in real-life soap opera star Robert Burg, who we were friends with at the time, made fun of him, and he liked that, and his wife Mandy, who is also a soap opera person, which we had a lot of fun, casting the 2 of them and working with them. And we brought in comedian Dave Hill, who was not available for our main shoot. So separately, when he was down in Washington, D.C., we went with him to the Maryland Renaissance Festival, which is a huge, amazing, big festival. And that's where we shot the professor scenes with him, which is why he doesn't interact with anyone else. But to sum it up, this project was shot across 3 different festivals. Bits and pieces were shot in New York City, here and there, like the office visits. If you look very closely, a couple of the Renaissance Fair like backstage scenes actually take place, I believe, in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And yeah, we just had a blast. We put this up in our 14 episodes, and it never got a huge audience or huge following, but it got a very loyal following. So as you're watching, you'll notice a couple things, certainly about the time, right? This being shot in 2008, there are references not to iPhones, which, barely existed back then, but to Blackberries, because that's what we were all using to communicate with each other. It's very funny in retrospect. And yeah, for sure, a couple of like the cultural allusions make no sense whatsoever anymore, but that's part of the fun of it. The other piece is that obviously, yeah, like this doesn't end. There's not like there's a climax of sorts, but it kind of ends on a what's going to happen next note. And I like that. And watching it again, I really like that sort of like, oh, we don't know if these people are going to save their fare or not. Spoiler alert. But I think that's part of the fun. So anyway, enjoy this blast from the past, the time capsule of All's Fair, the Renaissance Fair movie that never was. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to rule out or revisit to these same characters 15, 17 years, 20 years in the future. I probably will, because we're all very old now. But hey, why not? Like, follow, subscribe for more of this.